podcast starts.
Hello everyone. 1 week into 2021 and it's no better than 2020 so far, with horrible events around the world. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe and well, and if you're on the front line fighting the virus, thank you. To slightly misquote a meme which our friend Stella posted on Facebook the other day, what a year this week has been. I'm TD Velasquez in Manchester, UK, but you can call me Dan. We have a number of other rotating hosts right now on this show, but you will soon be hearing from my returning co-host Howard and returning special guest Spider Dan from the Spider Dan and the Secret Wars podcast, referred to in this discussion recorded in 2018 as Different Dan because he hadn't yet settled on his crime-fighting persona, and actor Luke Richards. On this podcast, we love to talk about horror, and this episode is going to be the latest in our Halloween franchise retrospective series. Our discussions aim to be fun, intelligent, and hopefully useful if your interest in horror texts comes from a creative or academic perspective, but be warned, we do tend to swear occasionally, and if it's anything less offensive than the C word, it won't get bleeped. So we are probably not safe for your work. It's appropriate that Luke's here because he'll soon be starring as Michael Myers himself in an unofficial Halloween fan film he has also co-written, One Night in Haddonfield. For more details, go to Luke's Twitter. There'll be a link in the show notes. You can find reviews of all the earlier films in the franchise from 1978's Halloween through to 1998's Halloween H20 earlier on this podcast feed, and in this episode we'll be discussing Halloween Resurrection from 2002. Please note, this discussion was recorded before any of us had seen the then upcoming 2018 Halloween film. If you haven't seen the film before, please note there will be spoilers, and if you have but have little memory of it, a fun memory jogger is the YouTube video made by the actress Katee Sackhoff, who plays Jen in the film, in which she reacts to watching the film for the first time, 18 years after shooting it. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Before we cut to the discussion, I have to admit that with the events of this week, I didn't really feel like putting much effort into the podcast edit, especially in comparison to the hopefully boutique job I did on last week's episode about Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, I think that was probably appropriate, as I don't think anyone put much effort into Halloween Resurrection itself either. Spoilers for my review. On the same note, there's no horror recommendations this week, except maybe the news. That's probably enough horror for everyone right now. But we'll be back with another episode next week, and its contents will be almost as much of a surprise to me as it hopefully will be to you. Cut to the main event. I am your co-host Dan, and I am joined by my lovely co-host Howard.
Hello.
And we have two marvellous guests here, Dan.
Hello.
Different Dan. And Luke.
Hello.
And today we are talking about 2002's Halloween Resurrection, a film by Rick Rosenthal. So, this is where we've got on to it. Is that for me? Well,
just a look at everybody's face when you just mentioned it.
That film.
Oh, yes.
This particular episode of the podcast, we're in a new venue. We're in the wonderful Unicorn pub in Manchester city centre. Welcome to the Unicorn, guys.
Thank you.
It's
Yes,
lovely.
it's a
Very
lovely
nice.
venue.
It's
Well,
lovely.
it is very joyously decked out for Halloween at the moment, so I feel that it's very appropriate.
Skeletons.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
That's a great line.
It's Con Evil.
It's so great that Rob Zombie decides to put it on the screen almost. Oh, never mind. We'll come to that. So we are in a functioning public house on a Saturday, so it's going to be a little bit noisy and a little bit musical, so you're going to hear strange interrupting noises occasionally. It's all part of the atmosphere, folks, but apologies if this occasionally dampens your enjoyment and impairs the sound quality. Just before we kind of get into the movie for this week, I'd just like to mention that a few days ago was Grimfest in Manchester, the horror film festival, which I went along to for one day, and I saw a few interesting movies there, one of which was a new horror anthology movie from producer-director Mick Garris called Nightmare Cinema. Don't know if you guys know who Mick Garris is?
No.
You know his work.
Right.
He was in the early 80s. He was the publicist of a lot of horror movies, such as The Fog, and lots of great horror movies. And from that, he became kind of well connected to loads of directors and producers. And he later got a great relationship going with Stephen King. So he produced and directed lots of the Stephen King miniseries on TV, like the remake of The Shining and things like that. Now, none of these are very good.
No.
And
I haven't seen them, so I don't know.
he also co-wrote like The Fly 2, which is one of my least enjoyed films of all time.
I'm getting better.
Yes, that's the quality of dialogue that he brought to it. Yes, I think there's something wrong with you. No, there isn't. I'm getting better, even though my skin's falling off my face. And then he directed and I think co-wrote the Psycho 4 movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I won't hold the quality of his filmmaking against him, because what he does have is he loves horror movies and he loves horror filmmakers, and a lot of what he does, even though he might not be the greatest director ever, is he produces things which brings other directors together and lets them do their stuff. So he produced the Masters of Horror TV series about 10 years ago,
Oh, wow.
which, like John Carpenter and John Landis and Joe Dante and people like that, all contributed.
I've been meaning to watch that, actually.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I hear that some of those individual installments are great. And Nightmare Cinema is basically the movie of that show. It's 4 or 5 stories, each by a different director. Joe Dante does one. David Slade, who was the main director of the Hannibal TV series, and did movies like Hard Candy and 30 Days.
Really
right,
great film
yeah.
as well.
Oh, which one?
I was saying both Hard Candy and Hannibal.
Hannibal's great. I've never seen
Amazing.
Hard Candy.
I've just bought it on DVD, very cheap. So I'm gonna. I hear it's a hard watch.
Just prepare to cross your legs.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
I've heard.
But it's an interesting film.
I can imagine, and he's a British director as well, which I didn't know.
Get in.
But the reason I'm mentioning it now is because the first segment in the movie, which is directed by a guy whose work I didn't previously know, called Alejandro Brugué, or Bruges, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's basically like a 30-minute slasher movie that's like the ultimate slasher movie. It's got all the cliches in it, but it also puts a really good spin on it, and it just launches it. Me and my friend Stella, who were watching it together, were just laughing and thrilled straight away. Unfortunately, the rest of the movie is kind of variable, and that is the best bit. They've put the best bit at the start, which makes sense. But I would encourage anyone who likes slasher movies to check it out for that segment alone. Really, I think it was the UK premiere at Grimfest, and I'm not sure where it's going to be released next. But I would keep your eyes on like Netflix and places like that. I don't know if it will get a cinema release. I think I should say as well, just good to see Joe Dante doing a movie again, which had Richard Chamberlain in it. Dr. Kildare, from heartthrob of the 1970s, I think. 60s, really, playing an extremely sinister plastic surgeon. It was a good bit of casting. So recommend that, and also just generally had a nice time at Grimfest. Even though they programmed too many movies and didn't leave long enough time for you to eat things in between. So if you're going to go, bring your own packed lunch.
Well, I think that's the same with any festival, isn't it? You've got to kind of decide what and what not to do.
I've never been to a festival before where everything was like 20 minutes apart. But,
trying to jam pack it.
But still, the quality was quite good, and the atmosphere was good. And you got Q&As with some of the directors and writers and actors and things, and so I enjoyed it. And I'll go again next year. So I recommend.
I might try and get down next year. I've always wanted to go because it always sounds right up my street. So I think that's something I'll do.
I think you can tell that the people who program it out of love, and they show short films as well. So it's a good opportunity to see kind of up and coming talent and local talent as well. Okay, so Halloween Resurrection. So if listeners have been keeping up with this series and have listened to all the previous episodes, you will have just come off the back of Halloween H2O, in which myself and Howard and Luke were all rhapsodising quite enthusiastically about that 1998 fun instalment of the franchise and comeback for Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode. 4 years after that movie, we had another movie. And this movie is a number of lasts that we must address. It's the final Halloween film to be produced by Mustafa Akkad, who was killed in a terrorist incident a few years later, 2005, I think. It's also the final Halloween film to be produced by Paul Freeman, who is the most prolific contributor to the Halloween series. He actually produced more of the installments than Deborah Hill did. He produced basically every sequel, apart from Halloween 5, following on from John Carpenter and Deborah Hill leaving the series. And basically, I think he was brought on by Mustafa Akkad because he was a low-budget guy whose acumen lay in the area of knowing how to get the best out of minimal resources. And Halloween 4 and Halloween 6 were made on that basis, and they were shot in I think Utah. However, when H2O came along, because of the success of Scream and things like that, as we discussed last episode, horror was big business again, and they could spend more money on the movie. And I think it probably says something about Freeman's efficiency that he was kept on as producer for the bigger budget H2O, and then Halloween Resurrection, which had a similarly sized budget of $15 million. We've come a long way from the first Halloween movie being made for
28 cents.
$350,000 there.
That's not the same Paul Freeman who's in Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Long Good Friday.
Very sadly,
and now
it is
crops
not
up in every British detective series at some point.
No, it's not Paul Freeman from Miss Marple. No,
right.
Was that Belloc?
Yeah, Belloc. Yes.
Yeah.
Once again, we see there is nothing you possess which I cannot take away.
It's a
It's my family labor. Yeah. So, so you do
Different Paul Freeman.
You do your impression. Dan.
My impression. It's a transmitter for speaking to God.
Wonderful. Yes, exactly. What kind of French accent is that, Paul Freeman? I'll tell you what kind. The right kind.
It's 80s
The
French.
entertaining kind.
Yeah. But
It's a load of Bellocks.
yeah, absolutely. But anyway, we're not talking about that Paul Freeman. We're talking
shame.
about the producer Paul Freeman. Only to just acknowledge that he's a guy who, in his own way that he didn't know at the time, he has influenced the course of all our lives. And without him, we would not be doing this podcast. This is the last movie in the franchise that he produced. And the other thing that is the other last associated with Halloween Resurrection is it's the last Halloween film to get a review in Halliwell's film guide, the legendary film guide, because after about 2006, that book stopped being published. In 2002, though, it was still being published, and although Leslie Halliwell, who originated it, had died in like 1988, new reviews were being added by a guy called John Walker, I think, at that time. And I would like to read you his little review of Halloween Resurrection. Obviously, we referred to the film guide in previous episodes of this series because of its great succinct little sum-ups of the plot and things, and also sometimes the succinct reviews it gets. So, Halloween Resurrection says, this is the plot summary. As part of a reality TV program, 6 college students spend the night in an old dark house where serial murders took place. Essentially, that is the movie.
Yeah.
And I think, but
Sounds good.
There's a hint there that doesn't sound like a sequel to anything. It could be the plot of any old slasher
Haunted
movie.
house.
And then
House on Haunted Hill.
the review then says, he doesn't take long to put his cards on the table with this review. The review says, dire horror, built on the premise that the ending was to Halloween H2O was a fantasy. It's just another slasher movie. So, not the most loved movie of all time. It was basically made because of Halloween H2O's success, and although when H2O was being made, it was kind of intended as the finale to the series. There was a loophole in everyone's contracts that said, that we can do more, and actually they included a mechanism in the script whereby, even though it seemed to end the story by killing off Michael Myers finally, this could be undone in the sequel. And lo and behold, Halloween H2O was a success, and the contract clause was activated, and people like Jamie Lee Curtis were brought back. But it ended up being directed by Rick Rosenthal, who, up till this point, is the only director to have done more than one Halloween movie. He was the guy who did Halloween 2. He was third choice to direct this movie, although he was a director of episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer at the time. Yeah. So in a way, he was probably seemed a bit down with the kids. At least that's probably what he hoped. But he was not the first choice, and in
probably
fact,
what he said at the time.
One of the previous choices, who turned it down was Dwight Little, the director of Halloween 4. He didn't want to come back. So Rick Rosenthal had no such pride, and he was just like, "Yep." And I remember,
is there money? Yes.
I remember at the time when this was kind of announced, and the movie's being made, and news was coming out. The fact that I was of the opinion that. Why are they doing a sequel to H2O? Surely it's not really essential or relevant. But then bits of news came out like Rick Rosenthal. I said, oh, okay, so it's Rosenthal again. There's a pleasing circularity to that. He's working with Jamie Lee Curtis again. His wife, Nancy Stevens, was in H2O because she played the nurse, Marion Chambers, in 1, 2 and H2O. And so, in a way, I kind of found that promising. However, on seeing the movie, which I only just have, maybe it's
for the
not
first
so
time.
promising. All the way through for the first time, yeah. But I think it's always good to start with the most positive. And I think maybe the person at this table who has the most positive things to say is sitting to my left here. So, Howard.
Yeah, I don't... I'm not saying this film's good. I'm not saying it's a good film or it's as good as some of the previous sequels. I think I probably enjoyed it a bit more than other people around the table seemed to. I thought there were some interesting ideas in it. I thought the whole idea of having the reality TV thing, which would still be comparatively new in 2002. Big Brother would only be 2 years old then. Wasn't there a series where they all put people on a desert island or something?
I think the Real World was a thing in the US. The Real World
And
was...
they do mention like the Osbournes as well.
That's right, yeah.
So there's still a relatively new thing, and I think quite an interesting idea for a horror film, a slasher film. Whether they do it justice is another question, but I think it's an interesting idea. I think the idea that the producers of this show have put some kind of props in this house to sort of scare people and you don't quite know, and there's some nice scenes where I do like the scenes where Busta Rhymes replacing Donald Pleasance.
I mean, who else could?
You can hardly tell the difference, really. I mean, but I do like the scene where he's dressed up as Michael Myers and he goes up to somebody who he thinks is Michael Myers and says, "What the hell are you doing?" And "I'm Michael Myers," and starts kind of knocking him on the forehead and stuff. I find that quite funny. Because Michael Myers has not really experienced that before, and all of it where the guys at the party and he's sending messages to them saying he's still alive and he's behind, he's on the stairs, whatever.
That stuff is.
I think that's as
borderline
an idea.
clever.
I think it's a good idea, and I think it's quite interesting and quite ingenious. They could have done it a lot better than they did. It's still the same. It's still the same problem we've got with all the Halloween sequels. You know exactly what Michael Myers is going to do. He does what he does. There's no surprise to it. There's no mystery to it. It's not really that scary because you know what he's going to do. He's too physical. He's too tangible in all the sequels. Unlike the first one, where it's this very strange, mysterious presence, he's just going around killing people. That's what the audience want. The contestants in the show are pretty obnoxious. The same old kind of wannabes, but I suppose that's a send-up of the kind of people who go
They're
on
all
reality TV.
quite stereotypical.
They are very stereotypical,
Yeah.
and they get killed in
one's
very
it's just
familiar
basically like
ways.
one's emo, one's the psycho fan, one's the sex nut, and
Yeah, it's not. There's not much imagination in the characterisation, and the way he kills them, he squashes somebody's head again, and he puts something on a spike again. So it's not. But I don't know. For what it is, because everybody says it's terrible. When I watched it, I thought I don't think it's quite as terrible. Perhaps I enjoyed it more just because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think there's some interesting ideas in it and some imaginative little touches and stuff. I don't like the idea of killing Jamie Lee Curtis off. I have this idea that if you survive a film, then you should survive for good. You know, you've passed the test kind of thing. You've earned your right to live.
the final girl badge.
Yeah, yes, you should have a sort of like a, you know, like they killed
You're
the
the
Betty
final
Cornell.
girl,
They
you
killed
can't be
her-
the first girl.
No, well,
To be fair, we'll deal with Jamie Lee Curtis's participation in more detail in a bit, but I'm sure she could have survived to the end if she'd wanted to.
yeah, I know why she
killed
wanted.
her
I
off
know
was
she
because she was
wanted to be
like,
killed.
I'll give you 2
And
days
I'm sure
of
she will
filming.
never do another Halloween film again. I'm absolutely sure she'll stick to that and not do another one.
Because
Yeah, I think you're right.
what thing is like the trailer.
She's a woman of her word.
The funny thing is like the actual trailer makes it look like she comes into the film like halfway through.
Yeah.
Because the trailer was like, there's only one person, and then at the end it's like her saying, "Hello, Michael." And
Yeah, I saw that trailer when it came out, and I was like, "Oh, she must turn up at the end and like kick his ass again."
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's trailers are often
Trailers are
misleading.
very deceptive.
Yeah,
and she's on the poster as well, just like you think she has a bigger role in it as well.
but if you look carefully at the poster, she has short hair, and it's
Yeah.
clearly from a photo from H2O.
But she is top billed in the end credits. When the credits come up, the top 2 characters are Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Myers, Brad Laree. Every other doesn't matter.
Those people are in it.
What are your initial impressions, Dan?
Well, my initial impressions of Halloween Resurrection is the worst one I've seen. It was clearly the worst one out of all the ones I've watched. Dreadful acting, dreadful cinematography, poor
Why do you
writing.
think the cinematography is pretty dreadful?
I just some of the shots, like there was the shot where Laurie's running up the stairs, and there's a window up this kind of stairway,
Yeah.
two-tier stairway, and then all of a sudden she braces herself against the window, and then Michael comes up, and I'm just like, there's no point in that. It's just there's a lot of just unnecessary shots, a lot of unnecessariness, basically.
Well, the movie is unnecessary.
There's even I remember a shot in when the kids are watching it live at the party. There's a reaction shot where they all go "Whoa!" and they're all like jump back, and then later on, there's a young blonde guy gets introduced and he goes, "Hey, what are you watching?" "Oh, cool." However, in that jump shot earlier, he's in that shot, so he's not even been in the room.
You've been watching this movie closely.
Yeah, I was, because I hated it so much. I was like, I need more ammo for this. But yeah, it's just bad. Busta Rhymes, it's kind of entertaining how bad he is as well. Like he's like, especially when he's like talking to himself, he's watching the kung fu and the thing, and he's like, "Oh, who's interrupting Ma Chun Li? Ma Wing Chun Li?" Yeah, and he's like, yeah, and he's going, and he goes back and it's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. You'll be like, fine." And then all of a sudden he's like, "Yeah," and I think the problem with Busta Rhymes for me is that. With acting, it's a lot what you say with your eyes, but he's constantly squinting.
Yeah.
You can't see what's going on. He's like,
Well, and
like this.
he says everything with his mouth.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
his
understandable
look at that
'cause he's a
mouth,
rapper.
It's massive.
Yeah,
that mouth.
you're always. I was mesmerised by his teeth. His terrifying teeth.
Burn!
I mean, and to be fair to him, I think he was only cast to be himself.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
No, I
And,
understand that.
and he wasn't.
I'm not a fan of Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's a fit for the Halloween franchise.
Yeah.
Like it just came across very, very 2000s. There was this very kind of cheese to it.
I think it's because it was so different. It's why I kind of liked it. I'm not saying it was great or anything. It's so different from what we've had in the past.
Yeah.
I think the bit where I was like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this is he's at Laurie's door, and there's another shot which I absolutely hated, and it's just him going, it's just the camera going douche.
Oh yeah.
Douche against the door like that, and through the little circular window, just douche. I went, just dreadful.
But, well, they clearly, this was a bit where he burst into her cell.
That's correct, yeah.
And they clearly just shot him bursting through it with no pre-lead up.
Yeah,
Nothing to show the force that he was using. So they've inserted a POV shot of the door with a digital vibration on it, as if it's his point of view when he's knocking against the door and working up some kind of momentum.
Dreadful.
Yeah.
And then he bursts through the door, headbutts it, whatever, and it's just splinters. It's just out of nowhere, like that. And I'm just like, it looks awful. It takes away his mystique of being like, I prefer if he snuck in, you know, you see this kind of, like we talked about, this ethereal shape presence.
Yeah, but I think the mystique's gone a long time ago.
Yeah, probably, but I still
I think it was, you could argue that it was on its way back from Halloween H2O.
Yeah, maybe.
No, I think the mystique's gone.
Okay.
all right, Howard. We'll
No, I do, because even though it shows a good film, but it's still, we still know everything about Michael Myers.
Yeah.
He's still very physical.
But if you look at the mask, there was a report that they put makeup on it. So obviously they got the William Shatner mask, but they put like more detail into it.
All right.
So that's why Michael's eyes are so dark. You can see clearly.
So they come out a bit.
Mm.
And they just like darken the details on the mask so it stands out more. And
well, it's weird because actually it looks, when I was watching it, it actually looks more like Leonard Nimoy. You know the scene with the two of them, Busta Rhymes and his and it's kind of like they're walking along. That looks more like Leonard Nimoy. It looks too clean.
So it's Shatner and Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy is a much better actor. Busta Rhymes is a much better Columbo murderer. And even more.
But like, I couldn't. When I saw that, I was like, I can't remember him. You know, obviously we've seen him with superhuman strength and, you know, invulnerability and healing and whatever. But I don't think I remember him like just exploding a door. You know, just splintering a door just by stepping into it.
No, he kind of in the first Halloween, he's like, when she's hiding in the closet, he kind of punches through.
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's a very thin door.
But it's not. He just. I mean, that's a secure door. That's an asylum door. That's not going to be something that you can you know, just blow up like that with. You know, it's like he appears out of inside the door, teleports inside the door, and it explodes because of his presence in it. And I'm just like, it just smacked of me of just crap. I was just like, and some of the I think a lot of the acting is dreadful.
Oh no, I would possibly agree, but let's.
I'm going too far.
What are your initial impressions?
Well, where to begin, really? I
mean, can I just ask you, where did you first see this film, or have you just watched it for this podcast?
I remember originally watching it on Channel 4 when they were doing I think they were doing the run of the whole Halloween series, and because obviously this is where I saw Halloween H2O, I fell in love with that film. And then Halloween Resurrection came on. It was like, oh, okay, it's Halloween again. So it's that film. And I was confused because it's like, well, wait a minute, he's dead. Wait, what? And then it comes up with the story of, he swapped bodies halfway through, and that's why.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Yeah,
that really is ridiculous.
The really upsetting part is
slightly cretinous.
That was actually Kevin Wilson's idea. That's how they got it to continue, basically. So Kevin.
Well, they must have thought of that when they were making it.
When they were killing him off, they must have
designed because apparently Mustafa had like a clause in the contract which said you can never kill him.
Michael.
So they wrote it that they don't kill him, but Jamie Lee Curtis kind of argued that okay, but can we make it that Laurie thinks she's killing him and the audience thinks she's killing him?
Yeah.
And as long as we don't give it away, you know he's still alive, so you know he can make another sequel. Is that okay? And they compromised on that.
Right.
Oh, because I thought on H2O that was it. Michael Myers was dead, and there was going to be.
It was like from the intention of probably the writers and Curtis and the director, it was the end of it.
Yeah.
But Mustafa Akkad was like, no.
There's this boat I want to buy, and I've still got the Halloween series to go. So
And also, I think he had them over a barrel because although the movie was made and distributed by Dimension Films, they had licensed the rights from him, and the agreements had a clause in it which said, you know, you can make Halloween movies, but never kill him because we always want to make more. So. They couldn't do anything about that.
And I think it was unnecessary as well, because obviously, H2O felt like a closer, and then obviously this was made. You can obviously tell this film was made because money, and it just destroys everything that could have been a perfect ending. So you've brought Michael back, he beheads a guy very quickly. Literally, it's just like the two security guards talking to each other, and then he grabs one, cuts his throat. The security guard checks him, and there's a headless body. It's amazing how quickly that he cuts through a head. I mean, if you've seen horror films, it takes like 3 swings.
If you've seen it in real life, just take a look.
But he's done.
You're forgetting. Not long after that, he explodes the door.
Well, so he's got quick head.
He's got powers.
He's got quick head cutting abilities. He's got door bashing abilities. He's officially the Hulk now.
Yeah, I think so.
And when he gets captured by Lee Curtis, and she's like, "I need to see you." It's like, no, this is you. No, Laurie, stab him. And then he grabs her, stabs his hand of her. It's just like, oh well, they've just literally gave 2 fingers to a legacy that was unnecessary.
It's a horrible way to get rid of a character.
Awful.
And then he gives the knife to the other guy in the mask, and then he starts to give this massive, backstory of Michael Myers, born 1957,
the greatest hits.
And then it's
Michael
just going
Myers.
back. It's just, and I'm expecting like, is he going to mention Halloween 4, 5, and 6, or is this going to? Oh, you know what? And to be honest, it's just one of those films where you can tell it was of its decade. It was 2002.
It's dated, very dated.
It's very dated, especially with like the Osbournes message and how all the characters are like, I'm the sex addict, and I'm the talking that guy.
And then the email stuff. I mean, it's weird because it shouldn't have. If they'd done it well, it might not have dated too well, because now reality TV is still a thing. Sorry, what are you laughing at?
Sorry, I was just thinking when she was like, "I've got to send an email," and it's the oldest computer exists.
Well, no, I mean, but like streaming is a big thing.
Yeah, of course.
Being in a house with loads of cameras is an idea that would still work now. But the way they did it, and the kind of the way it's hooked to extremely primitive looking email technology and all that, it makes it look like a kind of weird fairy
It dated
tale.
then, but it wasn't dated then.
No, of course not.
No.
I mean,
you know what I think? I was saying this to Howard earlier. I was saying when they get into the house and they've got the cameras on, if they went whole hog with that, if they did a found footage Halloween movie, I think that would be great.
That would have worked.
I think that is a good idea, but they don't. They have this unique storytelling opportunity and technology and the POV and all that stuff, and they barely use it.
Yeah,
they hardly it's only like as they get killed or as they sit, and like not even like as Michael passes a doorway or anything like that. Nothing like creepy or anything like that. It's just like camera shot of them dying, camera shot of Michael right up against their face.
Yeah.
How very interesting. There was a potential that they could have used. I mean, like we were saying, it's kind of a little bit ahead of its time probably with the reality TV show, but they could have really. If they did a Blair Witch.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. Yeah. If Halloween H2O was informed or influenced by Scream, which I think it was, then this film is influenced by Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
But only nowhere near as good, because I love the Blair Witch Project.
Exactly.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. But the kind of thing they're going for with all the sort of like the point of view shots.
Exactly.
It's filmed. The actors,
but it's
characters
still,
in the film.
but then it's still. Unfortunately, it's still. They're trying to mash the two things together, and neither of them work. They either should have gone hog either way.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose the aesthetic elements that make Halloween what it is, the music and the moody lighting and things like that. So it's a compromise, and therefore it's a gashing. They're not.
It is, no, I agree. I think it's an unnecessary film.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have been made, but it was made, and as it was made, you just have to take it for what it is. And I kind of was able to sort of.
If it was just like a Horror House film, and then the twist was that actually it's a Halloween film. Michael's come back to the house.
That would have been good.
I think that would have been a better approach. They do like a little homage to Peeping Tom as well.
They do, or rip off. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Cheap, quick rip off. Just say like, well, we watch horror films. So he's just as the pin's still, he's going forward, his stabs go in the throat, and then
with the tripod.
Tripod, yeah.
Oh, there's a weird
Ooh.
noise.
Yeah, what's that?
Michael?
No, I think you'll find it's the fly.
Jeff Goldblum's just going to jump in now. But no, it just follows every cliche, and it's a film that it's done and cheap. It's wasting a good idea, and the only thing that you can remember if you mention Halloween H2O is, I think everyone here is Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
And I think in the ending, I showed it to my girlfriend as well. We were watching the ending, and the scene where she's got the chainsaw, it's like, "You bastard!" And she's cutting him, and it hits his shoulder, and he's not like, "Ow." I mean, Michael doesn't speak, but as soon as she falls over and Michael's about to come over, Busta Rhymes kicks the door and says the infamous line, and I think if you all say it together, trick or treat, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's a good line.
Where are the awards? Where are the accolades?
It's certainly memorable.
David Mamet at his best.
Memorable and easy to imitate. So
my other favourite line.
Movie quotes.
I knew that was coming because we quoted it in a previous podcast, so I expected that line. But my other favourite one was the other guy, the friend of the lead female in it, and he's the kind of chef. He's the kind of chef character, and he's in the kitchen, gets the knives out of the drawer, and he's like, "You like sushi, motherfucker?" I enjoyed that one more than the trick or treat.
But it's just Michael's face when he sees Busta Rhymes. It's like, wait, you're still alive? And even when Busta Rhymes does his like kung fu, Michael's still giving this look like, wait, you're still alive? And then after, when he's coming over to Busta Rhymes with the knife, he grabs the wire it pains me. He says he electrocutes Michael Myers in the dick.
Oh yeah.
And Michael does this massive. He does this like
line as well.
I know, but it sounds like a yawning Chewbacca though when he falls back.
That's the man with the stick.
I know, but it will be louder, not just.
Busta Rhymes. I just think quite like the idea that instead of a middle-aged white psychiatrist, black bloke who can handle himself, who's as close to an action hero. Perhaps Busta Rhymes was not the right person. Maybe somebody else.
I mean,
but that character.
Yeah, no, I think
very different.
Yeah. I think they were good. I think it was a good change.
When there's not a lot of black or non-white people in Halloween,
no, that's right.
In
That's
any
right.
kind of heroic or leading role.
No, and I think that's fine, and that's not a problem. And I think, Howard, you're with the audience members who in the test screening, apparently, because originally Busta Rhymes was not a big part of the film; he was just in it. It was a fun cameo. But the test audiences loved him, so they deliberately filmed more stuff with him. And I'm willing to bet that the whole "Not with Chung Lee" thing, or whatever it is that he says,
I think it's Wing Chun Lee.
Wing Chun Lee, I think.
Yeah, I mean, apologies. I know very little about kung fu stars. Maybe I should know.
Apologies to all kung fu artists around the world.
I know a fair few, but I can't say I've heard of him.
I mean, I actually know. I know what Wing Chun is because I used to know a guy who trained in it. But so that's his name. Is it Wing Chun Lee?
Yeah, I believe so.
Assume so.
Maybe I'll Google it later.
Unless Busta Rhymes just made up on the spot, then kudos.
But no, I would just.
The whole thing was made up.
I suspect that scene is one of the ones that was added because it's basically Busta Rhymes talks to himself.
Yeah,
for 2 minutes.
That's one of my notes. Just Busta Rhymes talks to himself.
And it's also got pointlessly Tyra Banks in it as well.
She's barely in it.
She's barely in it. She's like,
she goes, "The TVs are on."
Yeah, and then because then the camera, when they do the Peeping Tom rip-off, the camera is very closely when she turns the music on. It's just watching her move, mainly her buttocks, really.
Yeah.
So.
And then she dies off screen.
That's it.
I think that's like the Scream thing again. Isn't Sarah Michelle Gellar in Scream 2, which is not very much?
But you see them die.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a name to go on the poster.
Yeah, I guess.
No, it says the credits say with Tyra Banks and Jamie Lee Curtis at the start.
They just walked on one day and thought,
yeah, I mean, okay, so I'll contextualise it from my point of view. I saw H2O at the cinema. I loved it. I loved the episode of the podcast we did last time where we just talked about how great it was because, I mean, it's not the best film I've made and it's flawed, but compared to the films leading up to it in this series, it's so refreshing and so straightforward. It just teaches it seems it's like it's almost like a film school exercise everything you previous guys got wrong about how to make movies, we'll do it right. The linear narrative, the characters who you have time to get to know, to care about, things like that, the logic, and the kind of the circularity. I think like the last thing I mentioned in that episode, which always just really pleases me, is that the Halloween H2O ends with the theme music kicking in, and you hear Jamie Lee Curtis' ragged breaths over it, which is a direct mimic of the end of Halloween, except then of course it was Michael Myers' breaths, things like that. So I loved that movie at the cinema back in '98. When I heard that they were making a new one, I had decidedly mixed feelings. I thought, because Jamie Lee's in it and because it's Rick Rosenthal, I thought maybe there could be something here. But it came out and it got terrible reviews, and I didn't want to go and see it. A few years later, when it was on TV, I'd heard that Jamie Lee Curtis got out of the movie within the first 15 minutes or so I just watched that much. What is that? We're being gassed.
Sound like a snake or something.
I know.
So I watched the start and was like heartbroken and disgusted by the fact that they killed off Laurie. They undid the ending of Halloween H2O and they got rid of Laurie in such a perfunctory way. The only thing I liked about it was, it's good to see the wig again, essentially, because she had the long hair, which she didn't have in H2O. Sorry, sometimes I just can't speak. So I couldn't say wig then. It's good to see the wig again. So I didn't watch the rest of it. I think I saw a few clips of it, maybe on YouTube, but I have never seen the full film until watching it for this podcast. And I'll tell you something about the order of movies that I watched for this podcast. In the initial burst of enthusiasm, I watched a triple bill of Halloween, Halloween 2 and H2O, which is a great triple bill. It's very satisfying. Those movies flow through together and come to a conclusion. Everything else I've watched, then I watched Halloween 3, and then 4, 5 and 6, and then obviously I'd already watched H2O, so I skipped that and went to Resurrection. And my experience of watching 4, 5, 6 and Resurrection is that it's an absolutely bizarre, depressing phenomenon you come across, that every subsequent film is twice as bad as the previous one, which you hated when you were watching it. But when you're watching the next one, you look back. I mean, I don't mean to say that I hated Halloween 4. I did quite enjoy that, as we discussed. But from that point, Halloween 5 was a major drop. Then Halloween 6 was like, I wish I was watching Halloween 5. And then Halloween Resurrection, I was so fondly remembering the crazy incomprehensibility of 2 different versions of 6, and like, one of the nice things about Resurrection is that they go back to the Myers house, and it's set in Haddonfield, which H2O is not, and they do recreate the Myers house quite well, I think, but weirdly, when watching it, I wasn't thinking, yes, the Myers house, I remember how spooky that was in Halloween 1. I was thinking, I fondly remember the time not so long ago when the Strode family were living in this house and having ridiculous family arguments with their boorish father figure, and Kim Darby was having a go at him on the phone. But none of that actually happened because we're now in a different universe, And I mean, I think in H2O, it kind of it leaves you with enough vagueness that you think maybe 4, 5 and 6 could have happened because she faked her death and she has no knowledge of it. I don't know how she doesn't know that she has a daughter, but whatever. Whereas this one, it definitely kind of states that no one has lived in this house for 20 some years, so that totally wipes out Halloween. Well, 4, 5 and 6. Certainly 5 and 6, because they're both in that house, aren't they? Even though in 5 it's a different house, it's an entirely different house. And I just found it so banal and thick. It was like I think, Luke, you said that it's like, it feels like it's done on the cheap, and it does. But the weird thing is, it had just as big a budget as H2O. But it's like they threw away all the lessons in filmmaking that movie had got right. The only thing that follows from H2O to Resurrection that was an improvement on 4 to 6 is that they've clearly realised that it's better if you keep the story simple. And to its credit, Resurrection does have a very simple story. Like you say, Howard, it's a fun idea. It can be summed up in a sentence in Halliwell's. That's all absolutely fine. It's not a very good story, but at least it's straightforward and simple, and you kind of know what's going on. But beyond that, I just found it kind of so stupid and repetitive and banal. Not that there weren't occasional good things in it. You know, I actually think, although you were criticising the cinematography, Dan, and you criticised the mask, Luke, I actually think Michael Myers looks quite good in it. You know, there's a lot of he steps out of shadows a lot. The way he moves and looks round, he's a kind of alive, sinister, silent presence, which in some of the other movies he's the whole. I mean, apart from at points like in this where he smashes through doors and things, I think he's actually quite well done. And I think some of the deaths are okay. Some of the gore effects are okay. Katee Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica gets decapitated in a marvellous sequence. So that it's one of those kind of classic slasher.
I think she's earned that through gurning throughout the entire film.
Oh, she's really annoying.
She's like her mouth is doing all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, what is?
Especially that scene where she's like, "Slut, bitch."
Yeah, it's just like she's just gurning her absolute tits off, and I'm like, just calm your face down.
Even the main girl, like the only reason she gets on the show is because she screams and breaks a glass.
Yeah, which is not her scream, by the way. That the actress couldn't scream, so they dubbed it.
Oh,
great choice for a horror movie.
Even acting wise, that was a.
That's an actress whose name I can't pronounce, called Bianca, I think, Kaliak. Kajlich.
Actor who cannot scream.
She's interviewed in the Halloween 25 Years of Terror documentary, and seems like quite a nice person.
I'm sure she's lovely.
Nice.
Yeah. Can't scream.
Yeah, and she's the character who's supposed to be the lead, and then gets usurped by Busta Rhymes in the reshoots.
Yeah.
And he rescues her and things. But she's in this group of 6. Like 20-somethings, whatever they're supposed to be, and they're so one note. I mean, most of them do. Well, there's like the chef one. Yeah. Like you said, the sex addict one. There's the one who's kind of bookish academic girl.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the kind of feminist.
Yeah. But not really.
No, not really. She's attempting feminism in her own
and
way.
Then there's the rebel, and then because I think the director does like little winks to Halloween 2 because one of the characters is called Bud, and in Halloween 2 one of the characters that get killed is called Bud.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think possibly for Rosenthal it felt like coming home to a certain extent, and I was glad that he was getting his name on a major cinema release, bless him. But I do think that one of the things we said in our review of Halloween 2 was that you can tell that although it's not as good a film as Halloween, it's a more professionally made film with a bit more money and more time, and all the acting performances are good in it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is partly to Rosenthal's credit. He seems to have lost his grip on that though now, but he's a lot older now, and he's directing a film about 20-year-olds. He's not really
about the internet and live streaming.
And by the way, are you aware that he is in the film?
Is he?
Yeah, he plays the college professor at the start.
He's great. He's great. He's in it for like 2 seconds.
Why can he not be in the film?
I mean, he's practically I think he is the only character in the movie who's over 30.
Yeah.
Unless you count Michael
He's very
Myers.
charming though. I remember that. I was like, he was talking and he's talking to the class and stuff. I was like, I'd love him as a teacher. Yes.
Yeah, no, he's alright. And if you see Rosenthal in interviews, that's what he's like, isn't it? I don't know whether he was just throwing in a Scorsese style cameo, or whether he just desperately needed money and he was going to get himself 2 paychecks. I'll cast myself in this role. That's the only role I could play. He'd probably auditioned for Michael Myers, but
what's really upsetting about the film is that it takes away Michael's, I think you said it, his objective, because once he's killed Laurie...
Well, that's something else I did notice. Once he killed Laurie, why is he killing people? He killed him because they're in his house, but then that changes his motivation. But then...
Although that was hinted at in Halloween 6 as well.
Could it be that they're not just in his house, they're altering it, putting things in, changing it, redecorating, adding all these...
They put a prison downstairs.
Well, yeah, they make this thing, but then they find the real kind of place Michael's been staying underneath down there, and there's like a dead rat and stuff. That's supposedly the real place he stays, but everything else is fake.
I did like the fact that if this is to be taken as a follow-up to H2O, and if you do take the H2O, ignores the previous sequels, it does bring up the question of where's he been for 20 years, what's he been doing, and this movie answers that, and could have answered it in a really interesting way, and I like that they thought of that. To your points, Howard, I would say that although the basic idea of the film is sound, there had already been a horror movie made the year before called My Little Lie, which is about a bunch of it's a Canadian-British horror movie about a bunch of kids staying in a mansion, and they're all on CCTV all the time, and they don't realise that it's like a snuff film.
Right.
Somebody's been employed to be a killer in the house with them.
Well, I've never heard of that one.
I've not heard of that one.
It's very good. It came out in a period, I was at uni at the time, and horror movies were not that common, especially British ones, and although you wouldn't know it was British to watch it, it was. It's directed by a guy called Mark Evans, who's done a number of good, quite hard-hitting movies. Like there's one starring Colin Firth called Trauma, and another one called Resurrection Man, which is about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and he's decent. It's a really good film. Anybody who's not aware of My Little Lie, check it out.
Okay.
It was. I mean, in 2000, 2001, there were just very few British horror films, but they were starting to emerge. So I was really aware of movies coming out like Dog Soldiers, which was soon after that, and 28 Days Later, and there was a movie called The Bunker, which was like...
that's the one with Keira Knightley?
No.
I think that's the whole you're thinking.
Oh, yeah.
But that did come out around that time, and so I recommend that, and that is a good take on this idea. And I think we were talking to our friend Gareth, who contributed to the Halloween 3 discussion previously about this idea, and he was quite into it because it's something like Nigel Neal would have come up with. It's kind of a little bit similar to the Year of the Sex Olympics, which was written 25 years before this movie, if not longer. But so no, there is potential to it, and I'm sure you don't disagree that the movie doesn't do much with it.
No, it doesn't do much with it. No, it's not. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying I think I liked it more than everybody else did, because I could just see things. I could see the potential. I could see what they were trying to do with it, and I think there were some neat ideas in it. And I did like it when Busta Rhymes kicked Michael Myers in the gob. It's just
I suppose my main gripe with it, apart from all the details I've just gone through, is that I found it boring. That's the main thing. Sometimes films are bad, but they're interesting and they keep your attention. But this one was, the idea is okay, and it's straightforward, which is good. Basically, it just boils down to a bunch of annoying characters getting killed. Which is, obviously no worse than a lot of slasher movies, probably. But it wasn't enough for me. And it does also start with 10 minutes of the legacy of a great cinematic character being desecrated. By the way, I was amused by the opening, the ineptness of the opening, in the sense that you have the flashbacks which explain that at the end of Halloween H2O, spoilers, when Laurie decapitates Michael, she wasn't actually decapitating him, she was decapitating a paramedic who Michael had swapped places with him.
He broke his vocal cords,
larynx or something.
But they, as well as using visual flashbacks to that, they have a couple of nurse characters who explain what's going on inside this conversation. That's Laurie Strode in there.
The exposition nurses.
They're not there for any other reason. They don't even get killed. This film could do us the service of killing these characters, but it doesn't.
He's a monster.
And it's a great bit of undirected dialogue, where these two actors are paid to do one job, which is explain the plot, but they don't properly understand the plot. And she says something like, but didn't the paramedic say something? And she's meaning, why didn't the guy say anything.
I'm not Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Don't hit me with an axe, please.
But she talks, the way she says the paramedic, it's like she's talking about somebody else who was there. And I just remember having to stop and think, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it wasn't very clear, but it's something they want to try and get out of the way as quick as possible, isn't it?
I'd like
It
to
has
point
to be there. You have to explain why.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've seen so many horror films which have bad exposition. Talking about generic characters, I've seen so many horror films with generic characters. So many
true, yeah.
It's always one,
cliche. It doesn't bother me, perhaps, that much anymore.
But I think it's just that thing of how you do it. I mean, you could do it like the cheap, slockish way, like Resurrection, or you could do it in smart coating.
Perhaps it would have been better if this hadn't been a Halloween film. If it just been an original
I tell you what,
idea.
If it was something else, I think that it wouldn't have been we wouldn't be criticising it as much and comparing it. Because we have to compare it because that's the point. I think maybe if it was its own thing, possibly we wouldn't be as harsh to it.
I mean, let's remember that there are actually quite a lot of fan footage stroke reality TV horror around that time. Everybody was cashing in a bit belatedly on the Blair Witch type thing, the Big Brother stuff. And this movie is actually probably better remembered than most of those others because I feel like there were tons. I can't really remember.
I don't know how much were around. I mean, there must have been a fair few.
They were getting bad reviews.
But
like float through cinemas.
I mean, they've been around for a long time now. Even up to like paranormal movie, we're still getting them. It's still a big kind of money maker, and they're cheap and quick and easy to make. But I don't know how many were out at that point.
But I think. At least this movie has Busta Rhymes saying trick or treat and things like that, and therefore it's still remembered and laughed about and stuff all these years later. I mean, it's 15 years old. It's 16 years old.
Yeah, because this was pre Freddy vs. Jason as well, because that came out the next year.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I think is a bit, it is a bit hit and miss. It's still an enjoyable film.
Oh yeah.
But I think it was that film that knew that kind of like movie making genre was coming, like either the found footage or because afterwards what also came out in 2003 was the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And if you watch the beginning and ending of that film, it starts off with found footage of a police officer going down into the Howlett farm,
right,
and then Leatherface John McGowan, chainsaw. So it did to face, and obviously had Cloverfield and Paranormal TC. Yeah. And then
it's its own found footage is its own genre now, really. It's its own kind of.
But I mean, there was more kind of not just found footage, but specifically around this time, I seem to remember. I could be wrong, and maybe somebody will message us if they hear this and think I'm full of crap. But it was like specifically around not just found footage, but like internet horror, streaming stuff, evil websites,
darkweb.com or something. This one called.
That was a quite recent one. Yeah. Oh no! Sorry, the recent one was Unfriended. Dark web.
No, but
it's still happening.
There was one before called. I don't. There was one back in 2002, 2003. I remember the poster of it. It was like a woman's like disfigured face on the screen. And I think
there was one called Fear.com.
That was it. Fear.com.
Yeah. So I think that was out around about the time.
Yeah. So and all these movies were completely slated.
Yeah. There's the new one's come out recently. I can't remember what it was called, but it's basically I think it's John Cho.
Searching.
It's
meant to be absolutely brilliant,
and that's all based on kind of internet profiles and Facebook.
But apparently it's beautifully done. It's really cinematic.
Good.
It's not just a man sitting tapping at a keyboard.
Yeah, of course.
In a static shot for an hour and a half, which a lot of these films kind of are.
If you ever see the film Buried with Ryan Reynolds, that's what that is.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so he gets buried alive, wakes up in the grave, and then it's an hour and a half or hour and 20 minutes of him trying to get out of the grave, out of the casket.
I've heard of it, but is it good? Does it work?
I didn't like it. A lot of people think it's great, and again, I've got nothing bad to say about Ryan Reynolds ever, really. He's a very enjoyable actor. I like him a lot.
He's very charming.
He's a very charming guy. Same with Paul Rudd. Even in Halloween 6, I quite liked him. But yeah, I think sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So it depends. But I wouldn't mind seeing that one. Searching.
Right. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I definitely want. I don't think it's been released in Britain yet.
What's
Is
it?
it?
Searching. I think it's coming out this end of this month, more November time.
Right.
All right. Well, I'll see if I can get to the cinema to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a couple of other things I'd like to say about this movie as a sort of Halloween sequel. I think it's got the most drab opening title sequence. We've mentioned title sequences a few times, and it is a bit of a hobby horse of mine. You know, if a film doesn't have a good opening credits, I am automatically against the movie. It's got to work extra hard to win me over. And, you know, we talked about how the Halloween movies have sometimes quite creative things with pumpkins in a lot of the credit sequences. This one doesn't. It's just black screen with words on it, and the Halloween music comes in. And actually, the version of the Halloween music that's done quite well is by Danny Lux, who used to be the composer of a TV series called Sliders, which
Sliders! I used to love Sliders.
Yeah, it's a great sort of sci-fi adventure show, and I remember the music being quite funky.
Yeah, it was great.
And his version of the Halloween theme has like echoey, haunting vocals on top of it, and I think it works quite well. It's quite nice. But what I realised on hearing that was that even though this is good, it doesn't quite work because the original music to Halloween was so minimalist and so specific that changing it in any way at all, I think just diminishes it. It doesn't quite transfer. You always lose something, and that's been the case ever since Halloween 2 with its kind of reorchestrated synth organs and all that. So I just, in a way, it just kind of, when I realised that, it felt like a little. And I'm sorry to say this to listeners who are actual fans of this franchise and like have great love for all of the movies, but it just kind of felt like the lesson was you can't improve on perfection, so don't even try. Having said that, like I've said before, I will always be excited for a new Halloween film. I'll always want to watch what they do with it, because the kind of enigma of Halloween 1978 is that it is a complete film, but you are left tantalised and you really want to know where it goes, and also because, for me anyway, no other film has ever had quite the same effect on me. You want to know, you want another film that will produce that, and nobody's ever made a movie that has done that. Good luck trying.
But the funny thing was, they were going to do a sequel to Halloween Resurrection, and it was going to be Laurie Strode's son, played again by Josh Hartnett.
Oh, right.
And he was going, because if you remember at the end of Halloween Resurrection, Michael Myers wakes up.
Yeah.
And surprise.
What a surprise!
What a surprise!
Didn't see that
That's the
coming.
one thing I wasn't.
Michael is still alive. But yeah, so they were going to do a sequel because it did make money. And
Well, yeah, on the 15 million budget, it made 30 million in America
Wow.
alone.
Yeah.
So
the plan was that they were going to get Josh Hartnett back, and it was going to be Laurie Strode's son was going to hunt down Michael Myers for killing his mum.
That could have been interesting.
Could have been interesting, but again, it could have been.
Keep the family dynamic.
Yeah, but again, it might have fallen
Yeah.
back into that Halloween 5 and 6 timeline.
yeah, and then he'd run into a guy with cowboy boots, and he'd like, "What are you doing here? Why?" I mean, what I would say is also just in response to like defence of the movie, in the sense of it's no worse than slasher movies. What could they have done? It shouldn't have been made. Whatever. Yeah, all that's true. But I actually do think there was potential to do something interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling this at the time when they announced that they were making this movie. There were two options. You either make another Halloween film that's not about Michael Myers, in the vein of 3, and you can do anything. They weren't going to do that. I seem to remember that the HalloweenMovies.com website actually invited fans to vote on whether they wanted Myers in the next film or not, and the fans overwhelmingly voted yes. Idiots. But it was always going to go that way because that's the proven box office element that they need. And so then they said, okay, we're going to do Myers, and they announced it was going to be called Halloween Homecoming, and it was all about a return to Haddonfield. And I thought,
Where he fights Spider-Man.
yes. So I thought that, and Harold Spencer.
Michael Keaton has a little cameo as Beetlejuice.
The amazing crossovers we come up with that will never happen.
Only in our minds.
Yeah, thank God. Well, apparently, so I thought that had potential to it because Haddonfield is like where the ghost lies. You know, H2O is not set there. In a way, it would be returning to the kind of folk tale roots. And I think you could have done something very interesting along the lines of what Dennis Etchison wanted to do with Halloween 4, where Myers isn't in it, but is in it. I think, you could have done a story where Laurie returns to Haddonfield having killed Michael Myers, because although she's killed him, she still can't lay the ghost in her own head.
Right.
And she goes back to his house the next Halloween because she's convinced he's going to return somehow, and she's there, and essentially she'd become kind of like the Dr. Loomis character. I picture her in the Mac. Because you have to have the Mac when you go into that kind
the Mac that he wore, or
the trench coat.
The trench coat. Yeah, that specific one. She goes and gets it from his
with all the burn marks. And
the
stains.
This Mac that has survived so many garage explosions. And I can imagine that there could be something good there. It could be a good role for Curtis to play, and it could be a suspenseful film because you wouldn't know where it was going to go. Is he going to return in some form? Is somebody else going to get involved? Wants to kind of mess with her or something? I think there was potential to do something interesting. However, two things then happened. One, they changed the title because they realised that Homecoming didn't make it clear enough that Michael Myers was in the movie, and therefore that might harm the box office, so it became Resurrection.
But he came home. That's the tagline of the first movie, surely.
I think the fact that they changed Halloween IV, The Return of Michael Myers, to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, indicates how intelligent they think a lot of their therefore they're maybe not going to wear on that kind of subtlety. I've just said something that's really patronising and snide.
Yeah.
But,
it actually was. Yeah. I did.
Yeah.
But that's the producers thinking that.
Yeah,
the audience,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's not the audience.
I don't want to insult the actual fans,
no.
but I think that the way the producers pitch those fans is not very complimentary to their intelligence.
No.
I mean, a lot of the time, I'll say again that I love a lot of these movies, and these are the producers who made those movies. And I'm very excited about the new film, which is being produced by the same people again, essentially. But I do think that they've been guilty of erring on the side of underestimating their audience and underestimating the appetite and the imagination of the kind of horror film fan crowd. I guess it all comes back to Mustafa Akkad always said that he wanted to try and recreate the first film as much as possible. Whenever they made a new film, we go back to the original. And obviously I think that was because the original is the most successful, and that makes sense from a business point of view. I don't think he necessarily really creatively understood what it was about the original that was so powerful and that resulted in that success. So all the subsequent movies kind of half-hearted attempts in different directions to recreate different bits of it. But I do think there was a possibility to do something interesting there. But they moved away from that. They had the reality TV idea, and I think maybe that was spurred on by the fact that Curtis made it clear that she was not going to do much in it. So they had to move away from the Laurie Strode character. And I think it's funny how they totally forget about the Josh Hartnett character, but I do think it's interesting. I didn't know that, Luke, at all, that they were thinking about maybe giving him a movie to carry on that story later on. So I guess...
Give him the trench coat.
Give
Josh Hartnett the trench coat.
It's like... But it's amazing how quickly his career went from being the son in Halloween to being... I mean, it was 9 years later, I suppose, but he was playing that kind of supposely grizzled character.
I think he was in the Faculty. Do you remember that?
Robert Rodriguez.
Faculty.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I saw Clea Duvall in.
And I'm
a big fan of Clea Duvall.
But that was. I remember that was around the same.
I saw that cinema. Yeah, it was great. I love the Faculty. Yeah,
that's great.
Again, Clea Duvall came from Buffy She got that role because she was in an early episode of Buffy, I believe. And she's in John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars.
Yes, I saw the other night in that, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed watching her in that as well.
Well, I'm glad for you. I also enjoyed it.
I'm glad for me as well.
In 2002 when I saw it at the cinema. It's a rubbish film, but I love it. But it's Carpenter. I'll always love his films, no matter how bad or whatever. So yeah, I think. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say about this particular movie?
Well, this particular film, or the whole. Are we going to talk about the whole?
Well, I mean,
an overview of the whole.
We haven't
franchise.
gone through the whole franchise yet, unless you count the up to number 8 as a separate franchise from the Rob
Well,
Zombie
and
films.
I just think kind of like watching all these films again for this. I do, as a franchise, I think it. Yeah, some of the films aren't very good. Some of the films are very, but I always think they've tried to do something interesting. Even if it hasn't come up, they've tried to do something. They haven't just what Friday the 13th did, which was just do the same story and over again. More kids go to the summer camp and get killed. Whatever. They by having like little girl in it, Danielle Harris, and that.
And for all its flaws, Halloween 5 does try and develops what the previous film gave it. And that's why it's such a strange film in many ways, because it doesn't quite know what to do with it, but at least it does.
But I just think they're trying to do something. That's why I like these films. He's trying to come up with something and trying to be a little bit creative. And I think the best sequel is Halloween 2 because it's the one that's most like Halloween, stylistically and everything. And I think kind of the main problem with Halloween Resurrection, as with all the others, is, and I've said before, the more you know about Michael Myers, the less scary he is. In the first film, he was this mysterious figure, and you don't know why he's doing it, or what is he, supernatural or what. Also, I think the problem is once you get to 4, 5, and 6, whatever, you kind of realise he's unkillable.
Yeah.
So where's the tension in a film with an unkillable? You can't stop him, so he's just going to keep on killing people.
Like the human body of Joel Nature,
Yeah. So it's there's no real suspense because he's always going to come up again and
You expect him to sit back up now.
Yeah.
Like
See,
the first
that's going to happen.
first film, you wouldn't ever have expected him to sit back up.
No.
And that's another thing that H2O has, in that it kind of is aware that you expect him to sit back up, so it doesn't even wait. There's loads of bits where Laurie kills him by smashing a fire extinguisher on his head, and he falls down, but then immediately gets up because he's running away. And that's why people have described it as more like a comedy than anything, because of the timing of that kind of stuff. But sorry to interrupt.
No. I mean, like in this film, like when there's a big fight at the end and everywhere is on fire and Busta Rhymes, he's not going to be electrocuted, he's not going to be killed because he's Michael Myers, he's a supernatural being, so he's going to survive. So there is no tension, but that's true of all the sequels.
A lot of horror films as well, a lot of franchises.
Absolutely. Same with Jason Voorhees and all of them. It's like, and those idiots in Wrong Turn, and they keep getting up again, much to my annoyance. But so that's I think that's an essential problem with Halloween films, is that kind of the problem is Michael Myers is a brilliant character, but kind of he's the problem because he has to keep on doing in every film, no matter how imaginative the rest of it is, he has to do what the audience expects him to do. He has to go around killing people. You have to have that. And as each film goes on, that becomes more and more familiar. We know what he's going to do. Even in Halloween Resurrection, kind of the deaths are sort of like he crushes somebody's head, like he did in another one. Sort of. And there's a kind of sadistic element now to Michael Myers, which there wasn't, I don't think, in the first one. He sort of really
the childhood kind of curiosity and
in the first film, he's like
playfulness.
he's playing with them, playing tricks on them, sort of almost like observing them, seeing how they respond to what he does.
Like
now he's just like a big hulking monster that crushes people's
heads.
heads.
His behaviour in this, when he's not killing people, was very strange to me. The fact that he hands over his knife after killing Laurie to the guy.
Well, I mean, in a way, to me, I'd be happy to see that as part of his playfulness if that was an element elsewhere in the film. He does, and again in H2O, there's a kind of a slight playfulness hinted at the fact that he doesn't kill everyone he comes across.
No.
That woman who you think she's going to be attacked when she's in the public toilet. But he just reaches under the door and grabs her handbag so he can steal her keys and things like that. he doesn't attack LL Cool J to get
No,
he doesn't at any point. LL Cool J is
Busta Rhymes.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
You know, LL Cool J is nearly killed, but he's killed by one of the good characters accidentally shooting him. You know, and
there's some social commentary for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think again in the commentary on Halloween 2, Kim Newman kind of observed that it became a kind of staple or a tradition in. It became like a tradition in early noughties slasher movies that you'd have a character played by a rapper who seems to be killed but then comes back and he's okay. And LL Cool J did have this role in both H2O and also Deep Blue Sea.
That's the chef.
And then so
you eat my bird.
Resurrection kind of does that, but then goes one further by actually Busta Rhymes kind of wins.
Star of it.
Yeah.
Kick the shit out of him. Remember Deep Blue Sea? Because when I went to see it in Liverpool, I was the only person in the cinema. It was like a Wednesday afternoon. I was at university then. There was nothing to did have a lecture that afternoon, so I thought I'll go and see this film. And I was the only person in the cinema watching it, and I thought they're not going to start it. They're going to say I'm sorry. It's not worth it. But they did. And I enjoyed it.
But you paid your money.
It's just a weird experience to be in this. It's like your own private screening in a huge camp.
You can make as much noise as you like.
I'll
sit in the pricey seats.
I think I was in that situation once, and I put my feet up on the chairs in front of me, but they came and told me not to do that.
So you're the only person in here, but you must observe the rules.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. How about you, Dan? How does at this point in our journey?
In regards to which one I enjoyed the most, or
just how do you feel about the 8 films that we've looked at so far? How do you feel they stand as a franchise?
So I didn't see 2. I haven't watched recently 2, 3, or H2O.
Right.
I do remember H2O very fondly because I was probably around the right kind of age, kind of 10, 11, 13 for something like that. So I was kind of like, oh yeah, what's this about? And I do remember it being good. Like I do remember the performances. I remember all the. I think Michelle Williams is in there.
Yeah.
Josh Hartnett. I remember LL Cool J. So I remember that being. I enjoyed. I can't really remember 3 very well, but I remember enjoying the second one. You know what? 4 was very good. 4 was very strong for me. I think in regards to the rest of them, I think it's a bit more action packed. It was. I think they did try and capture. I think that one was definitely the one, probably apart from H2O, that captured the original as best you can without making the same film.
Sure.
Resurrection is the worst one I've seen, easily the worst one I've seen. And I think if I did watch those films again that I missed, I would still believe that. But yeah, I think it's a good franchise. I think there's always a bad apple in a bunch, and Halloween Resurrection is that bad apple. And yeah, at least like Howard is right. They do make a conceited effort to be a bit different, to challenge themselves, to go different directions. But yeah, he does need to do his thing. Michael does need to do his thing. Shape needs to do his thing. And yeah, and some of the layers that are added to his character, the familial relations, things like that, his mission can take away from that. Sometimes, in some regards, can add something interesting, something different, But on the whole, I enjoy the franchise, but obviously the original is the best. Yes. Always will be, no matter however we look at any of these other ones. You just have to go back to the original and enjoy that for what it is. But I think some of these films are valiant efforts. Like people have tried really hard. They've done that. Like nobody goes out to make a bad film. So they've all tried their best, and with the restrictions from producers, maybe I think you might be right, Dan, where Mustafa Akkad doesn't know creatively how to recreate that film, but he says he has a white mask, he has a knife, he stabs. That's it.
I mean, it's not his genre. No, he didn't create the original film. He just funded it. It was Owen Yablans and John Carpenter. Yeah, and they've gone. They've left him on his own.
Like I think you said he used to do epics and things like that, kind of
religious epics.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
I have to admit, I've never seen any of his other productions.
No, but he's clearly gone. This is a cash cow.
Yeah.
Let's milk that cash cow. Grab the teeth.
I think that's the nature of Hollywood. That's the nature of
Yeah,
sequels. Sequels
yeah.
are just giving people more of the same thing, and
Yeah.
there's they are limited in what
But
they...
clearly the Halloween audience want that. We want that,
Yeah.
and we obviously want it to be different. And that's the problem with sequels, reboots, and remakes is that we want the same thing, only different.
Yes.
And I think
that's the essential problem.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
sequels, generally.
Yeah. It's either too the same or it's too different, and we don't like it.
That's why I think sequels are my favourite mode of movies, and it's because I think that central problem is fascinating. How do you make it the same and yet different enough to be worthwhile?
Yeah, but too many of the times the film doesn't solve that problem and ends up being a bit crap.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's we can count thousands of poor sequels to films, I'm sure, and but there's quite a good selection of very good sequels, even superior sequels.
Nothing makes me happier than a good sequel.
Yeah.
I'll be honest about that. Aliens.
Perfect.
Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back, Stepped on Sun Ride Again. And I'm not joking about that. I really love Stepped on Sun Ride.
Not Sweeney 2 though. But,
No,
Scream 2 is a really good example of a sequel. I think in this genre that is exactly enough. Sufficiently like the original, but brings enough changes and progresses everything as well.
And I think I think you're absolutely right. But I think on a whole, it's a good franchise. I think there's worse horror franchises out there with worse sequels, with worse ideas for sequels, worse acting, and I think there's a stylishness to the Halloween and the character of Michael Myers that is not, reminiscent in a Jason Voorhees or a Freddy Krueger. There's a restraint to Michael Myers and his character and the way he does his thing, and that may have changed during the intervening years of the sequels. May have got more brutal, more like stronger and more kind of backstory and what have you. But the original film's still very stylish, very well made, well directed. The music is amazing as well. So yeah, and I think he's kind of the classy of the slashers. He's the classier of the slasher characters.
Slasher.
Yeah, like he's the kind of he's the John Lewis version of a slasher villain. He's the upper market kind of that kind of thing, and Jason Voorhees and Freddy are going slightly down. Got your Chuckies and your leprechauns and all sorts. They go further and further down. But he's
the leprechaun certainly goes further down.
He's directly at the bottom, size-wise.
No, I think Halloween is the only kind of slasher film that you could seriously put in any book of great films.
Yeah,
Is that,
it's in a way it's kind of an art house.
Yeah,
a little bit.
it is.
It's an art house film. Like It was made cheap, but it's made with such talent and with such precision and style that and again we've talked about it. It's the weighting of that film. It's the quote unquote boringness of the film is its strength, and I think in those intervening sequels as well, we don't have that anymore because people are like, get to the murders. Yeah, where's the bloodletting?
Yeah, that's what that's.
I think you're right there, Dan. Actually, that's a really good point. The stylishness of the franchise, because things like the music, it kind of recurs throughout every film. And although we talked about how effective it is or isn't in the different sequels, that those basic minimalist themic kind of pieces of music are really distinctive, and very few other franchises can claim an identifier as strong as that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously lots of movies have their theme tunes, and like another great 70s starting horror franchise that I think has a terrific theme tune is Phantasm, but there aren't that, so there are one or two others, but really the use of music in the Halloween franchise kind of really stands out.
Could you hum a Friday the 13th? Well, I guess that one is original. That's just apart from that, can you remember that theme?
No.
Apart from that opening, does Freddy have such an iconic theme? No.
No.
So I think that it goes to show that it is the like Michael is the art house slasher, if you will.
Well, it's like the proper film slasher.
Yeah, it is
like the kind of,
it's the film critics slasher.
It's
isn't
like,
it?
the
And it
legitimate,
reinvented that whole genre as well, because as you remember, like the whole slashers thing was very cheap. It was very cheap.
Yeah.
And, it could be made by anywhere, but with Carpenter, he brings that certain style. He brings a figure. He's got. It's your basic story. You have the heroine, you have the monster, you have the wise man, and it all just balances out. And he finds a way to bring new life into it. And even though, yes, some of the sequels maybe hit and miss, as I said, they do explore new fields. They'll try new things. Each director brings a key element, either directorially or how each character is introduced. But like you said, Michael Myers is the embodiment of an iconic slasher. He's big. He wears a mask. He's got knives. He seems unstoppable. And before they started revealing his whole backstory, like you said, Howard, there's something. It's the mystery of this figure just walking, just standing in the street corner, looking at you, and you have no idea. And I wouldn't be surprised, like even now, like the new Halloween coming out, it looks amazing, and it is the Michael Myers. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, like, in the next 20 years, 30 years, there's going to be another Halloween series that might explore a different field, whether it's the cult of Michael, or if it's something like, I don't know, witchcraft, or they try again with the anthology that they try to do with Season of the Witch. But it's that's the thing. Michael has just become this iconic thing, and like you said, even though we have like Freddy and we have Jason and we have Chucky, they all went their different routes. They all have the different styles, but it was Michael who does maintain that mystery, and it's what makes a great villain. The mystery of who is this person, why are they doing it, and even in the opening of John Carpenter's original. You're shocked to find out that it's a little boy, and where it's a middle class family, and he just killed because he could, and for 30 years he was locked up, and it still maintains that history today.
Oh, brilliant! I was just about to ask you, Luke, what your kind of impression of the overall franchise was.
Well, apart from the fact that I think people can tell that I'm not very happy with Resurrection, and I know, and in the last one I said Halloween H2O is my personal favourite because it was my introduction to the mystery of Michael Myers, and then it took me on the journey going back. And even though I haven't seen Halloween 4, 5, and most of 6, I think with the Michael Myers, Carpenter went out to create this being, this great horror character, and like Dan said, it's an art house horror film, and it's got everything you want in a horror film. It has that slow burn, it has that thing coming, and the music. It's Jaws for slasher films, basically.
It does remind me of Jaws.
Well, it's
a completely different thing. But
I know we were just talking about the iconic themes. That was the other one I thought of. Yeah. The only two really iconic horror themes that could come to anybody's mind once you hear that.
And you couldn't make a Jaws film without that music.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
And same with Halloween, really.
Until they reboot Jaws in the future.
Well, even we were just
CGI,
mentioning Deep Blue
Jaws.
Sea, and I do remember watching that film and just thinking it was weird to see things going around and stuff, and not hearing dirt.
Yeah. I watched The Meg not so
Oh,
long ago.
okay.
There's quite a lot of Jaws references in that, and it is silly. It's a very silly film, but it's one of these films that is basically made for a Chinese audience because they have the biggest, the population-wise, China's huge. So now they're actually having, like, Pacific Rim 2. The only reason that happened was because everybody in China was like, we want a sequel to that. They're like, no problem, you're going to see it? Great.
Yeah, it wasn't
huge
very popular
box
over here.
No, exactly. And because they don't have a big, Star Wars isn't very big over in China and things like that, because they were like, well, we have our own history of that kind of stuff, and we have our own kind of things that interest us more than Star Wars, So yeah, it was it's basically kind of Jason Statham punching a shark.
Well, that sounds like incredible fun, but I heard the movie wasn't as fun as that sounds.
It's all right.
Is it like very, very, very cliched? You know what you're seeing.
It's a B movie. You're going to be watching a B movie, you know, and it won't be very good. It was like it was my family. We were in there. It was a family thing, and we were just like, we're just going to put a film. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, this is all right. This will do. You know, I did watch another giant monster movie or kaiju movie, if you will. It was Rampage.
I've seen Rampage. It's great fun.
I loved it. It was so much fun.
I think it was possibly Robbie Collin on Radio 1 who said this is the kind of movie that could only have been made by a director called Brad.
Yo.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
No, it's good fun. I paid to see it. No, I didn't pay to see it. I was on a free trial of the Odeon Limitless thing, and I immediately revoked my membership, having seen 2 films for free. That was my long-term plan. But no, look, what can possibly be wrong with a movie in which Dwayne Johnson plays a brilliant primatologist? You know, that's my recommendation.
A film about genetic editing.
Busta Rhymes was busy that day.
Shook a tree, monkey.
So basically, that's it. Just to put my 2 pence in on the franchise. I do feel from what you've said, Howard, that I kind of suddenly realised, at least you can see with this franchise, 8 movies we're in now, and you can see that they have tried multiple different ways to try and sequelize Halloween. They've tried finally finishing it, which is Halloween 2. Let's just do the next thing and push it as far as we can and end it. Then they've tried bringing it back and pushing it in another long-running direction with 4, 5, and 6. Then that didn't really work out, so they've gone back to Halloween 2 and unfinished it, and then finished it, and then they've added on to that from Resurrection. And yeah, there is a lot of creativity in it. I mean, like I said, it's my fault in a way because of the way I watched the movies. The first 3 I watched, 1, 2 and H2O, and then Halloween 3. I feel like I'd kind of got all the most interesting movies out of the way. Then 4 was alright. 5 and 6 and Resurrection that are kind of increasingly painful, but still do have kind of interesting things in. And I am glad that I did that deep dive on 6, especially to kind of see where they were coming from, what they were trying to do with that one. And I think I will always be kind of fond of the memory of having watched 6. I will never watch it again.
You don't need to.
No.
It sounds like the way you describe it sounds like you've experienced some form of abuse. I will never watch it again. Never again.
I'm strong, I'm not a victim.
It just came twice with different outcomes.
And I read the script. Why did I read the script?
And then they closed the doors of Smith Grove Sanatorium and never let me out again. By the way, at Grimfest they were selling T-shirts that said Haddonfield, Illinois Psychiatric Unit on them. And I was tempted to buy them, but then I thought, no, it's Smith's Grove. He was never actually incarcerated within Haddonfield.
He always had to travel there. That seems like a fan. That seems like a fan-made T-shirt that's made a huge mistake.
Yes, but it looked nice.
Yeah.
And the other thing I thought about H2O following our discussion was, I don't know if you're aware, but reviews have started to come in for the new film.
Oh, yes.
And I've kind of skim-read some of them. I don't really want it to spoil things for me, but I'm getting the impression that the broad theme seems to be it's basically like Halloween H2O again, but it undoes H2O, so it's just the same film in many ways.
Right.
I don't mind if it's just that, but it's done well. I don't mind because even though I love H2O, what I suddenly realised is H2O kind of acts a bit like it's a sequel to the original, but it's not, because if you watched Halloween 1978 and then watched H2O without Halloween 2 in between, they don't make sense as a story.
Of course, yeah.
But it is to H2O's credit that, like you did, Lou, you can watch it on its own and it makes total sense. But it's just, but in terms of like the franchise timeline, you need Halloween 2 to fill in that logic gap. So if they've now done a new movie where you just don't need Halloween 2, but it otherwise does the same job, I think that could be interesting. Apparently, Jamie Lee Curtis is great again, and I'm looking forward to see what
I think I read the IGN review, but I've not read any other reviews.
Yeah, I've just kind of glanced at a few, because I don't really want to do many details, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it. And it obviously, unlike every other sequel, including Halloween 2, if you consider that although Carpenter is credited with the music, it's actually Alan Howarth doing it. This movie actually has music by Carpenter. He's actually doing it, and people seem to be unanimous in praise for that. So I'm looking forward to that. But mentioning that, the weird kind of plot progression from Halloween to Halloween 2 to Halloween H2O, because it's only in Halloween 2 that you get the plot element introduced that Michael and Laurie are siblings. And that makes the kind of flow from movie to movie a bit awkward. Someone who obviously thought to themselves, wouldn't it have been much simpler and easier if Halloween 1 had stated that Laurie and Michael were related straight away? Somebody who obviously had that thought is Mr. Rob Zombie. And that is a movie that we're going to come to in the next episode of this podcast. And there's plenty
I can't wait.
Grunge Michael.
Oh, gee. That's what it is. All right, well, thank you very much for listening, folks. I've been your co-host, Dan.
And I've been your co-host, Howie.
And we've been very grateful to be joined by our guests, Dan.
The other Dan.
And Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. This has been great fun. More fun than watching the movie. And,
exactly right.
We'll be back here sooner than you think, to quote grown-up Tommy Doyle. See you next time for Halloween 2007.
Bye.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Howard Whittock and T.D. Velasquez. With special guests Spider Dan and Luke Richards. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. Or visit our Facebook pages at AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now, the podcast stops.